Hi, y'all. Let's try that again. I don't know what just happened. Zoom, or I'm not even on Zoom, Facebook. It's the technology we're on. It's doing it again. It's giving a little glitch. Let us see if I can pull myself up in the group. But happy Wednesday. How y'all doing? I'm having a beautiful week. I had a great weekend. My husband and I walked something. I haven't actually checked my app. I have an Aura ring, but I think we walked over 11 or 12 miles this weekend. So that was kind of fun. Had just a lovely, lovely weekend. And my stepson is graduating middle school on Friday. So I'm going to his graduation. Y'all with kids, you must feel this even bigger than me. So I'm a stepmama and I met my stepson when he was 4. So he just turned 4. It is blowing my mind that he is about to start high school. It is a very, I can only imagine for those of you who, not that I'm not like I'm a real parent in a way, as a step parent, but it's such a different thing I think when it's like you've had them since a baby. Um, Gosh, it is just all of the things to compute. So that is what is going on over here. We've got a good juicy topic for you today. We're going to talk about why authenticity is killing your message and what to shift for more sales without being fake. And I've got a lot to talk about this. I feel like we've talked about this conversation in different ways before, and I want to kind of tackle this from a slightly different lens. Before I dive into all of the things, let me pull up what is our giveaway today. Our giveaway today is we are going to give one person who's here live, say hi, drop an emoji, let me know you're here, and we're giving away one copy of my bonus playbook. It's a resource guide for you with 6-figure content strategy. It has prompts that my clients and I use to create content that stops the scroll and gets more reach. These are some of the prompts I've used to get a 2,250% more increase on reach, and also the kind of reach that turns into conversions. As a side note, I'll say this here and then we will dive into the good stuff, and I'll share this again at the end of the live stream. If this is something you want support with, a lot of what we're talking about here today is your message, right? And content and sales. And I was just talking about this with a new client today, just how much has shifted in our space and how we've seen things that were working for people before and bringing in eyeballs and leads and clients just aren't working in the same way. And I've just had so many people hire me recently where they had a strategy that was working and it kind of stopped working. Leads dried up, clients dried up. And the work we've been doing is to not think that there's something wrong with their business, but to see that things just change in industries, audiences change, what people respond to changes. And so we've just gone in and update their messaging, update their marketing strategy, not to like give it an overhaul or make it more complicated, but so that it's really going to work today to again fill their pipeline and to bring in clients and to bring in sales. I've been helping so many of my long-term clients with this. I think this is why my clients are sustaining and still scaling in 2024 when it's just true. I think a lot of businesses are, for all the reasons we've talked about, struggling a little bit. Some are closing their doors. But this is also why I created my new strategy intensive, Your Marketing Multiplied. I created it with this in mind because I just have seen what a need this is and how this is, like, I'm not just saying this to make money. I'm fully booked, right? I'm saying this because this is the thing I'm really seeing is turning things around for businesses. So I have one strategy intensive. We're fully booked with one-on-ones. I do have a one-on-one ongoing 6-month spot opening up in July. So if you've kind of been looking for the longer term support to not just map out a strategy, but to hold you through it and to keep working it so that you're refining it to really amplify that strategy, amplify your results, to bring in consistent leads that you know how to turn into consistent clients in those 10 and 20K months. I do have one of those spots opening up in July, but I do have a strategy intensive we've opened up this month if someone wants to snag that, where we do either map out a brand new marketing strategy if you don't have one, or update what you have. We figure out the right problem to solve so that it is working in 2024 and update that messaging. That's a little bit of what we'll be talking about today. But I wanted to make sure I mentioned that at the beginning because I don't always have those available, or sometimes we're booking those for the future. But I do have one intensive and I have a one-on-one spot opening up in July. Okay, let's talk authenticity. Let's talk why this is killing your message. So what I said in the email, if you're on my list around this, is authenticity is such a buzzword. I didn't say this in the email, but I think authenticity is such a buzzword in our space. And I think what authenticity actually means is so important. I really strive to be authentic. I really strive to keep it real. I have spent my 8 years in business showing, what's true behind the scenes, taking you along the ride for my journey. I also really believe in giving educational content that is authentic, right? And that we have given a 6-week sales course for free and drop the paywall around that. So in all of the different ways, I hope if you meet me, I've had clients, quite a few clients in town recently, if you meet me in person, I think you'll see I am offline who I am online. I do think I'm slightly different in my coaching role than I am in my friend role, but that's because I'm being paid to be in a specific role. I should be a little bit different, right? I'm wearing a different hat. I don't coach my friends, for example, right? I show up as Kim, not the coach, and if I'm your coach, I'm going to show up a little bit differently because that's what you're paying me for. But authenticity is a top value of mine. So I don't want you to hear this title and to think that what we're saying is that authenticity is not the thing and being authentic is killing your message. But here's what I have seen on quite a few of my strategy intensives, and I was just talking about this with an ongoing client this past week, actually. It's funny because I picked these topics far in advance and it's just been so relevant, is how, I think especially right now, because there is so much shifting in our space, and I don't even think there's so much shifting in our space. I think so much has shifted, and I think everyone is playing catch up to, I've been saying this since November, December of 2022, I've been focusing on these shifts and working on clients with these shifts. I just think we're starting to see the fallout of what happened if you didn't start to pay attention to the shifts in the industry, the shifts with the economy, the shifts with audience and kind of what people are wanting to consume, how platforms have shifted, how content has shifted. If not to be like you should have listened to me in 2022, but if we haven't made those changes, right, we're just seeing in the industry kind of the fallout of if we've just kind of been doing the same thing and not shifted along with that, we're seeing the result. And I do think that because it's more crowded than ever, right, people are just seeing their pipelines have dried up. It's, what's the word I'm looking for? Customer journeys are longer than ever, which has more to do with just kind of what's going on in our space in the economy. And I think people are seeing what worked before isn't working today to bring in sales. And so when that happens, right, we just have a lot of extra noise in the space. I mean, I'm hopefully not adding noise. I'm hopefully giving you insights and context. And for those of you who are new to my world, I've been doing this for 8 years. I only do one-on-one. So I'm seeing intimately behind the scenes of what's working and not working in business all day, every day. And I'm in 2 masterminds. So I'm also seeing there through my peers who are multi-6 and 7-figure business owners. So hopefully what I'm bringing you is valuable to hear and not just adding to the noise. But I think when the industry is in that space, and if you're maybe in a place where you're feeling a little bit of a contraction or a little bit of scarcity, right, it's very easy to feel frenetic and to start grabbing onto bits of information, right, and just to feel like you're just latching on to, like, what do I do to solve this? Because what was working isn't working before. I don't know what works anymore. I don't know what's up, what's down, right? Like, I think it's just a little bit easier to almost feel like I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I feel like I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall. And part of, I think, what is being talked about a lot is how important authenticity is, right? And you and I can be on the same page. Authenticity is important. I'm going to keep saying that. Lila says you definitely give lots of value and great perspectives. Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate that so much because that's an important value for me. So that's my goal. So thank you for saying that. And Lila, I mean, I'm sure you can attest to this, right? Authenticity, the actual true definition of authenticity, keeping it real, being honest, being who we say we are, right, I think has always been key and essential to marketing, to business, especially if you're in any service-driven business, right? It matters a little less. I always have my lip gloss here. If you're the person who makes this lip gloss, I have no idea who makes this lip gloss. It kind of doesn't matter to me if they're authentic or not. I mean, I care just from I vote with my dollars kind of a perspective, but in terms of, like, that's not really impacting my buying decision. But if we're doing one-on-one work, if we're holding group containers, masterminds, even if you're selling a course, but it's a course with, your thought leadership, authenticity matters. So I think we can get on the same page with that, and that tracks. However, when you're being kind of chirped at in the online space, like, be authentic, be authentic, be authentic. What's working didn't work before. Like, what's working is be authentic. You have to be more authentic than ever. People want you to be authentic. That's what's working to bring in sales. What I have seen happen is the pendulum really swing. And I think this can happen all the time with anything, right? When something's not working, when we're in scarcity, when we're in fear, I think it's just so easy for the pendulum to swing. And what I'm seeing and what I've been coaching clients around is, instead of being authentic, it actually is like this fake authenticity. And I'm seeing it happen in 2 ways. I'm going to explain what I mean here by fake authenticity, because that's like an oxymoron. But one, I see I had a intensive recently, and one of the things I was saying to them is their content was great, but there was almost like so much of a need to like talk about the hardest, deepest, darkest secrets and like pain points and challenges and things to seem authentic and real, because I think they were like almost like that's the thing that's working, right? Like that's what everyone's telling me to do. That's what people want online. That it was actually making it unintentionally. This person is like so not the kind of person where this was the intention, but unintentionally it was making it all about that person, right? All about them, not about the reader and their audience at all, right? There wasn't that I'm creating content for you. I'm not creating content for me. If I was creating content for me, that would just be like my side art project, and like I would hope you would like it, right? When I create content, I create it for you. I create it so that it's valuable for you. You're the person I want to serve, not me, right? It's not self-serving. It's serving for you. That's why I have a business. So it's sort of missing that service element for who the content was intended for, but it was also unintentionally. Again, this was so unintentional. This is like a brilliant, smart person. This is just something where it's like sometimes we just can't see the forest for the trees in our own work. And one of the things I was saying, I was like with all the love in the world, like this is almost hard for me to connect to, and it makes me feel a little like I have to caretake you, and it has me end up missing where I feel and trust you as like I might like you and I feel like I know you. That is an important part here, but that trust, like I feel like I'm missing that trust in terms of like trusting that if I come to you with a challenge that's similar, that you got me. And I think what we have to remember with marketing, and I'll share the other really sneaky form of authenticity where the pendulum swings, and I think this is where my heart center people fall more. But I think with this piece here, I think what we have to remember is kind of like what I was saying before. I am this, if you meet me, you're one of my clients and you come meet me in person, and I will take you out. If you come visit in New York City, right, and we hang out, I'm pretty sure you'll be like, oh, Kim is exactly like who she is here, right? Like I'm not that different. However, I think you would also say Kim in a coaching session is very different than Kim when I go to get coffee with her. Same person, but I do show up differently when I'm in a coach. I am in a different role. I am in my expertise. I am there. It is all about you. It is all about helping me solve like your problems. Like I'm literally I'm coaching you, right? And when I don't coach my friends, right? It is a very, very different, same person, but a very different relationship. And I wouldn't share a bunch of stuff about myself, quite honestly, because it's all about you. I might share some just for the relatability and to give permission. And I need to be in my authority, and I need you to feel like this is a safer place for you to explore, and I need you to feel like I got you, right? Like I got you in this so that if you're in some stuff, like you feel like you can bring it to me and I can hold you in it, and I'm not going to be rocked, but also like I got you in figuring this out, right? I think that makes sense. You can let me know if that makes sense. Whereas if I think about my friendships with my friends, like of course I want my friends to feel like I got them, but like my job is not to like hold space for my friends. That is a reciprocal relationship where my job might be there to be like a little bit like, let me bitch about this thing and you're gonna bitch, like not that we celebrate stuff too, right? But it's just a very different relationship. So I think we have to remember that in content, where I think sometimes we can go so far, bring the authenticity, also bring the authenticity and think like authenticity means just sharing, like people only connect through hard, challenging things. And by doing so, forget to connect the dots to the part of, and here's the lesson in this, or here's what I've learned from this, and here's the way that I can show you I'm still an expert, I'm still an authority, I'm still someone that if you're struggling with this, I got you and I can hold you through this. And I think it is so important to understand that nuance, because otherwise it's not that authenticity is bad, but authenticity that doesn't match the role you're showing up in can be very detrimental to sales. I'm hoping this makes sense. If I authentically show up to my friendships, right, I'm just authentically going to show up slightly different than I'm authentically going to show up for my coaching clients. And I want to be so mindful and to hold a standard and to hold a respect for what that role is and what that responsibility is. If you're a parent, we've been talking about parenthood, right? Your role as a parent, you probably authentically show up for your kids differently than you do for your partner, right? Because your kids, your responsibility to your kids is different than your responsibility to your partner. And they both ask you to show up authentically. I'm hoping that this is landing, because I want to talk about the other, because we've talked about that kind of authenticity before, and I will give you an example of how to play with that. But the other piece here that I am just seeing in terms of authenticity that is killing, and I don't mean like it's killing everyone's message, but this is what I was talking about with a client earlier this week, that I am just seeing really harm messaging and marketing and harm people's ability to make sales is what I'm calling fake authenticity. And that's when, and Lilith, oh, then I want to read your comics. This looks like a good one. And this is when you are a beautiful, heart-centered, empathetic human being who cares so much about your people, that has figured some things out, that has created some success, right? That is an expert in what you do, because that's probably why you sell what you sell, that doesn't want to make people feel bad. And so you don't want to make people feel bad, and you're hearing people preach online how authentic you need to be and how you need to keep it real and how like guru marketing is out, which it is totally out. And you're like, oh, well then I can't possibly tell people that I got it good. I can't possibly tell people things are going well for me. I can't possibly tell people I figured this out, right? Because that's going to make me look like a guru, or that's going to make me look like I'm bragging, or that's going to make me look like I know it all, or that's going to make me look inauthentic. So let me actually tell people how hard things are, even though they're not. And this is mind-blowing, but be honest with yourself. How many of y'all have done this? I cannot tell you how many of my clients do this. They are, whatever it is they help their clients with is something they've usually mastered, right? And they have this like, let's say they're a relationship coach, right? They have this beautiful relationship, but they know their clients are struggling with that. So they almost like water down and downplay. They basically apologize for this beautiful relationship they've created and label that as I'm being really authentic because I want to keep it real. I want to be really authentic. And what I said to my client this week, I was like, with so much love, you realize that none of this is actually real. Like this is actually lying to your audience. Like, yes, authenticity matters, but when we're watering down, when we're downplaying, when we're apologizing for what's good and what we're good at and what we've created, right? Like that is actually a form of inauthenticity. It's just because we're maybe in fear or scarcity, or we don't want to get hate, or because we're being told this is what the marketplace wants. I think it's just really easy to lie to ourselves and say, no, this isn't me being the most authentic ever. Authentic does not mean bitching about things and just like talking about how hard shit is. Authentic also means saying like, hey, things are really good for me. Hey, maybe I used to struggle with this, but I have these tools that have helped me, and like, this is how great things are. Like that is also authentic. And when we're not willing to be honest and authentic about that side of it as well, I think it can be incredibly detrimental to your message and to your sales, but also to what your audience needs to hear, right? I think, yes, we need to extend the bridge. And if you've been where your people are, to share that authentically, I think to share that vulnerably is so important. And I think it does land really well. But to forget to connect the dots for people as to, and I'm on the other side of it, and here's what's helped me, and things can be so much better, because we're worried that that isn't keeping it real, that's going to make someone feel bad. Like, what a disservice to our people, like to say like good luck. Like good luck is like nothing's ever going to get better. And I know that's not what anybody, I'm being a little glib, I know that's not what anybody in this group is intending. I know everybody here, it's like we want to help our people, right? Like it comes from such a well-meant, like such a like bleeding heart place. Like I get it because I'm wired that way, but I think we have to step back for a moment and understand what's really going on and how it really isn't actually that serving. It isn't actually that serving to marketing. Okay, let me hear Lilith's comments here. Lilith says, this is really refreshing to hear. I don't like talking about myself all the time or even half of the time when I'm making content. I bring up experiences if it's relevant, but other than that, I just rather talk about things that would just help them. I've been feeling so wrong lately because of this oversharing movement, been so confusing. I'm going to speak to that because I think that might be helpful, and if you have specific questions, let me know because I think it's really relevant to this conversation. Lilith says, yes, I struggle with the people who are going to think I'm a know-it-all. Yeah, and I think it's just so helpful to see what the fear under that is. And I think just to like vocalize that and normalize that for everyone, I think that is the fear. I think for my client, I think it was like, and this isn't one client, this is like multiple clients who are all excellent at what they do, right? They're just heart-centered, empathetic, caring human beings who don't want to be asshats, who don't want to make people feel bad, right? Who don't, I think especially if you're in the coaching space, we have some problems in our industry. So I think there's also this way the pendulum has swung for a lot of us who really believe in coaching and really believe in the industry and that like 90% of it is good, that I think we can almost do this like overcompensating thing where it's like, I don't want to be a part of the problem. And all of the people who are like smoke and mirrors and lying and like not wanting people to get on coaching sessions and telling people basically they shouldn't need support and whatever, all the bullshit, or like just charging high prices with fluff behind the scenes that I think we can almost overcompensate, right? Where it's like, well, I don't want to seem like a know-it-all, or I don't want to seem like I'm bragging, or I don't want to seem like I have all the answers. But I think what we have to notice is with love, like for all of us, I think there's probably a little bit of healing for all of us to do in this industry, because in some way that's affected us. If you're not in the coaching industry, if you're in this group, you probably have still been affected by some of that. So there's probably just a little bit of healing for all of us around that. But I think also just noticing with that, I think it has kicked up some fear and stories for people. But that what we're seeing is then the response is more about those fears of, I don't want to seem like a know-it-all. I don't want, basically what we're saying is, I don't want someone to judge me. I don't want someone to think I'm part of the problem, right? That I'm the problem, that I'm bad, as opposed to looking at, but what is the message I want to share? What is actually of service for my audience? What do people actually need to hear? What are people actually responding to? What is actually going to help me be of the greatest good and service? And not from a pressurized place, but for all of you, if you're good at what you do, which I know you are, if you're here and you have an offer that can support someone, right? Clearly communicating that and helping someone understand how they can benefit from your work instead of one of the smoke and mirror, the 10% of the industry that is problematic, right? That is actually of the most service. And so kind of apologizing for, backpedaling, diminishing, feeling like I'm going to share this even though this isn't exactly real because then it's more palatable. I think that's actually where we're just not being of the most service to anyone. Hoping that this is landing for you all, but let me know if you have questions about that. I want to just see my notes here because I want to address Lola's question, but I feel like there was one other piece I wanted to share with the authenticity part. The other piece here, and then Lilith, I'm going to circle back to your question about the content, what's confusing, but let me know if you have specific questions around that as well. The other thing I'm just noticing kind of with the authenticity piece, and I'm going to keep repeating this. I am like, be authentic. Like that is what we're going for. I think again, we just want to keep thinking through the lens of what is authentic in my role as a CEO, in my role as a coach, in my role as a therapist, in my role as an OBM, right? I think sometimes in my role as a parent, in my role as a spouse and a partner, and to not make that wrong, right? We all have different roles we play in, like that we show up in the world. I think about this as an actor, right? Like I had different roles that I played. I was authentic in all of those roles. I brought different parts of me to them. But if I tried to bring all of Kim to any single role, because that's what would be authentic, it would actually just be really confusing and it wouldn't serve the role I was playing. I always feel like I use the gym as an example, but it's just so easy. When I go to the gym, right, I show up authentically as Kim, but I'm in my role as someone who's showing up for a spin class or who's showing up, to talk to the person at the front desk, right? I'm going to bring a different part of me authentically there than I would to you here or on a coaching call. If I showed up with this energy and this kind of conversation to the person at the front desk of my gym, I was like, let me talk to you about how you're running your service. Like, let me coach you here on how y'all are selling. It would be so wildly inappropriate, even if it was like, in air quotes, authentic. So I think we just want to remember where we're showing up, what part of us to authentically bring. And to remember when we're in our role as a service provider, part of our role that is fully authentic is, we all have different aspects to our personality, is the confident part of you that feels like an authority, that knows you're an expert at what you do, that knows you can support and serve someone. I probably said this in so many different ways, but I always think about with sales and with service, we don't have to have all the answers, and especially as coaches and therapists, right? Like that's not our job. But I do think our job is to have more confidence in what we're offering and our ability to support someone than the person we're selling to. I was just talking about this with someone, and I was like, yeah, like I don't know the timeline, like I don't know exactly like how this is going to unfold, but I got you. Like I'm confident in that, right? I need to have that confidence and that authority, and that needs to be authentic. Like that's where we need to have the authenticity, right? And to see like that's an authentic part of that role of me as a coach. That's the authenticity I need to play into, not the fact that, oh, I'm a human who also has fears and insecurities because I'm a fucking human being, and we all are, right? I think it's very easy for us to get confused. It's like, well, that's super authentic too. Should I bring in all of my fears and insecurities into my work because that's super authentic and transparent and vulnerable? I think that's where we want to be really mindful of, like, if it serves the role, and if so, how do we bring it into the role in a way that makes sense? I'm going to keep using parenting as an example. If you are a parent, I'm sure there are times with your kids where you're like, authentically, you want to scream and you're like, what the, like I love you all, but I'm going to kill you. Or authentically, you're like, I'm really scared, right? Because I love you so much. But in your role as a parent who needs to be more confident than your child and to be sort of the leader and the teacher, right? All of these things, what you probably present is probably the confident, the strong, the parental authority side to you. And you probably share that completely with integrity and with authority, with authenticity, right? But it's in the authentic part of your role as a parent. And then you go to your spouse, right? And you bring that other part to you. I'm hoping that nuance makes sense. And then maybe when your kids are old enough to understand, you might authentically share with them, gosh, or like after they were out too late and they didn't call you, right? And they come home, maybe after you've done the parenting thing from confidence, that's when you might say like, hey, I got to tell you, I was really scared. Like it really worried me when you did that, right? You might still authentically do that, but it's still in service of, or coming from the place of your role as a parent, not from the place of, and I think this is where this authenticity part can also get twisted, from this place of like, I need you to self-soothe me. I need you to caretake me. I need you to tell me I'm going to be okay. I need you to help me process this. I need you to see me in this thing, right? That's when it becomes all about us. And that is great in certain relationships. That's great with your friends. That's great with your partner. That's great with your coach and with your therapist. But when we're in our role as expert authority, right, we have to be so mindful that if we're sharing those things authentically, it's as a way to bridge the gap and to connect and to be relatable and to say, I've been where you're at. Here's what I've learned. I've been where you're at. I get how this feels. Here's how I can tell you it's going to be easier, better. Here's the lesson I learned. Here's how I'm confident I know I can support you because I used to be there, right? Or I see you in this because I'm a human too, as opposed to I see you in this and I need you to see me in this as well and caretake me. Hoping that distinction makes sense. Let me know if it doesn't. And then again, on the flip side, remembering that if you're an expert, Brooke Castillo said this on a podcast. She has the Life Coach podcast. I don't listen to it anymore, but gosh, this was literally probably like 7 or 8 years ago when I was starting my coaching practice. She had a podcast episode, and she essentially said that if you're not sharing the good, and she was talking about specifically sharing about women, like talking about the money they made and the success they had, that you are lying by omission. Basically, that is lying just as much as lying about how much money you make if you don't make that much money is. And so I think we have to remember the authenticity. If you're also not sharing the good because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, because you don't want to make someone feel bad. I have a client who we've done a lot of work around her feeling like she can authentically share how much money she makes and how great her life is, because she had such a worry that it was going to push people away. And one of the things we were talking about is exactly this, that it is just as inauthentic to lie and pretend to be a part of that 10% problem in our industry that's potentially lying about the money they make, potentially lying about results, right? Like that's all smoke and mirrors. It is the same thing if you have all of this good stuff and to not share it if it's in service with your audience because you don't want to hurt their feelings, right? Like both forms, I'm not calling anyone here a liar, but I think it can be helpful for the brain to give you some permission to share those things, right? It's still just not authentic to share that. And then I'm going to flip around to the content piece here, and I think Lilith is bringing her question, so this will tee us up perfectly. Lilith says, I guess my question is, how do you tell people the answer without making them feel wrong? Or is that even something I need to worry about? In my regular day-to-day life, I'm very direct, and I don't worry about that because if it's going to land, it'll land. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. I'm always open to a conversation about it, but it's not my responsibility to regulate their emotions about what I say. Perhaps that's the mindset I need in my business as well. I'm not blunt, it's not harsh, but it is direct, so it can bypass BS reasons and excuses their mind might bring up, like my own mind did, and how I got myself through it. I don't know, please help. So I've got 2 thoughts for you on this. This is great. Thank you I feel like you teed me up so beautifully, Lilith, and I think this is something a lot of people have a question about. So I think the first thing here is to see, to me, what I'm hearing you say is the way, and you can answer this or not answer this, but my guess is the way you are in your regular day-to-day life, this is also probably how you show up as a coach, right? Because I'm thinking through, like, not just how do you show up in your regular day-to-day life, but how do you show up, because I'm pretty sure you coach, Lilith, right? Like, how do you show up as a coach? Are you pretty direct? Are you pretty blunt? What is that, like, what is your kind of coaching approach philosophy? And I think that's the part we want to see, like, how do I authentically bring that into my message, into my content, into my message? So if you're pretty direct, if you're pretty like cut to like no bullshit, no BS, I think that's what we want to bring into your message, because that's going to be really congruent, right? Like in some ways, like trying to make sure you don't ruffle feathers, or that like it's not going to come across as, I'm just trying to see here, like example, it's not harsh, but like I'm not saying you're even thinking this, but like if you're worried it's coming across as too blunt or too harsh, like that would actually, like if we think about it, like actually be inauthentic to not bring that into your messaging. And it would be confusing because incongruent, because then when someone gets on a call with you, and I'm not saying at all you're doing this, I'm just using this as an example for everyone listening, right? Like if it's sort of like we're almost like watering it down to be like more palatable on content, and someone gets on a call with us and we're a totally different person, right? Like it's just like, wait, like that's confusing. And so I think that's really important, right? Like if we think about what's going to create a sale with the right fit client, it's someone who sees that message, sees that bluntness, that directness, and is like, that's the kind of coach I want. And then that congruence is what happens on the sales conversation. Lila says, yeah, that's how I'm in coaching sessions and DMs. Yeah, so I think that's just so helpful to see, like, right? So that is authentic. That's the authenticity we want to bring in. Now with your question, because I think there's Lilith just had the for anyone who's listening to this in the vault later in the podcast, the little like emoji with like the brain exploding. I'm curious what part made your brain explode, because then I can, if there's anything I can extrapolate more on for everybody else. But I think then the other nuance here, and I think this is just helpful to understand, and I think this is why this has gotten really confusing and the pendulum has swung with just kind of the shifts we're seeing in our industry. What is also true, I literally did an Instagram story, I did a bite-sized biz lesson yesterday on Instagram about this. I was saying I was on a mastermind call with some of my friends, and we were talking about kind of the shifts in terms of like what kind of content is performing best right now. And I think across the board, I've probably been saying this for the last year and a half, like guru content is out, right? Like pedestaling content is out. Bringing in personalization is making a huge difference. Bringing in, I call it strategic vulnerability, which is what we're talking about here, finding the way to be vulnerable, but still to stay in your role as an expert, as a coach, as an OBM, whatever it is you do, right? Finding that way to be vulnerable, but to still stay in that expert role, so you're not asking people to caretake you. These are all things that are, that's just the kind of content people are craving, and I think we have to be mindful of what does the marketplace want from us? What are audiences, what are people wanting? And one of the other things, I don't want to name names just for confidentiality reasons, but one of my mastermind sisters, she just phrased this really well. And so these are not my words. I always want to give credit where credit is due, but I just thought it was brilliant the way she said it. She said, no one wants to be talked at anymore, and no one wants to be taught at anymore, right? We want to be talked with. And so, well, it's what you're speaking to. And I think, again, this is where maybe if you're someone who's really direct and you're no BS, right? I think that can be a little bit confusing, because it's sort of like, well, wait, I'm direct, I'm no BS, but then are people gonna feel like I'm talking at them instead of with them? And so I think the shift we all have to make and play with, because I do think 6 months ago even, it was a little different in our space. And I think if I wrote a super sassy post, maybe not 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, there was a little bit more like, not calling people out, but sort of like speaking at like, here's this problem, like here's this thing, like I'm just being really direct with like why things aren't working and being a little sassy about it. I think that probably would have done really well. And I know for a fact it doesn't work well now, because I had a reel that bombed last week or 2 weeks ago, and I looked at it and like, no big deal, something bombs. I think this is also just maybe permission giving for people. I have a fully booked one-on-one practice. I make a lot of money, y'all. My content works really well for me. I study my message and my content every day. Like I've been studying this since we've seen shifts in the industry. It's why I'm so good at it. And I still have stuff that like flops from time to time. And I'm so grateful when it does, because it is a gold mine of information. Because the first thing I did was look at that and I was like, oh, well, this is validation for kind of my hunch for what we're talking about in this live stream. That post was a little bit like, not calling out, but it was a little bit like, here's what's up. Here's what's like wrong. Like, let me show you like how I know the things. And like, people just do not fucking want that right now. And the content itself was great. We'll probably repost it in this group. I'm just going to make a new hook for it, right? I'm just going to give it a different positioning. But it was so helpful for me just to have that evidence there for this conversation here, even that we're having. And so a little bit to what you're saying, like, I think the nuance is how what I've been saying with clients recently as I've been editing their content and giving feedback, a couple of the notes I'm giving is, how can we look at not making people feel wrong, right? We can still be direct, we can still be no BS, but how can we frame it in a way where it's like, we're not making you wrong, we're not calling you out, we're not making you feel shameful for something, we're not making you feel like you screwed up. You know what I mean? Because like that doesn't feel good for anyone. And I'm sure, Lilith, without even knowing your coaching approach, I just can tell from your energy here and like just what I know of you through like engagements on social media, there's no way when you're direct to a client, you make them feel super wrong, right? Like, or that you're making them feel like you know all the answers, right? Like, and so I think we want to find that difference. And so I think Lilith says, yes, it's so confusing. How do I be direct but not talk at people? And so I think that's where bringing in things like our personal story or client stories, and really thinking about I don't know if this is going to land for you, but the way I've been framing it for myself is, how do I kind of fall on the sword first, or how do me and my clients fall on the sword first, so I can show them what's real, what's authentic, so I can say like, so I can extend the branch or the bridge to say like, hey, this is a human thing. Like, this is normal. This happened, right? How can I extend that, but then also stay in my authority, right? Stay in that directness if I have that directness, to like also be like, I'll use myself as like this is the lesson I learned. This is what I did 6 years ago in business. I'm just thinking, or like this, I'm trying to think of, so I'll give an example. I did a reel last week, and basically, maybe a year ago, basically the point of it was, so often we get stuck in business because we are just looping on past stories, on past experiences, right? We just can't unhook from, this is what happened 2 years ago. This is the rejection I got last week. This didn't work a month ago, right? We can't unhook from that, as opposed to like what creates momentum and success is like learning from lessons, failures, mistakes, but like looking forward, looking to what's next, like moving one foot in front of the other. Like that is what changes things in business. Like we have to be more present, but even more forward focused as business owners than past focused. And maybe a year or two ago, I would have maybe I would have been a little bit like, if you're not getting results, right, it's because you like keep obsessing over that person who said no to you 3 months ago, or right, I might talk about it really directly like that. What I did for this post or this reel, same lesson, but I just made it a little bit more personal, and I was like, this is a lesson my dad gave me, and it's a quote. My dad was a race car driving coach, and something he always said to me growing up is, and like this is really true, like every single time I was in the car with him, sitting next to me, whenever he was shotgun, he would always say, keep your eyes focused on the road ahead, pointed where you want to go, and your car will always follow. And I think in the reel, I was like, and it made me wonder how many people are like looking in their rear view mirror or trying to fix a car that isn't even broken. And then I went on to basically share the message I just shared. And so I'm giving you that as an example of, I think it's just seeing like you can share the same exact message in the same exact directness. I was pretty, I think, direct in the post, but I used more of like my own personal example, a personal lesson, a personal, like here's how I learned this, or I might use a client example as a way to present the information, as opposed to like, hey you, here's the thing you're doing wrong. Hey you, like here's why you're not getting clients. Hey you, this is why your marketing sucks. And I would never say that anyway. But I think it's still taking the same core of your message. But I think I think what's fun about this is like, that's actually quite authentic. That's actually quite real. That's actually vulnerable. That's personal, right? It's all the things that content needs right now. So it's kind of checking all of those boxes. But it's still like, it's strategically personal or like vulnerable, right? Like it's vulnerable, it's personal, but I'm not going into a whole bunch about how my father passed away or like all of these other pieces. It's really in service of the lesson that I want for my audience, but in a way that I think is having the conversation with someone, because I think it's something that's also relatable. People are like, oh, that makes sense. And like, we all drive cars. Well, I don't drive cars because I'm in New York City now, but I think that's just something that's a little bit easier for us to not to feel wrong around, to like be like, oh my gosh, that's so universal. I get that. Like I can get on board with that. I can like be in the conversation with this. Like it feels like I can respond to that. Well, let me know if that, because I'm like pulling up examples I wasn't planning to on this live. So let me know if that's landing or if you want another example. I want to check my notes in a second because I feel like I have one other piece to share here, but just while I'm on that thread, the other note I'm giving clients around this is kind of in line with the authenticity, but what to shift for more sales without being fake and just kind of what I'm seeing is working. I think just seeing like all of those things are like, if I use that reel for an example, that is, in some ways, it's more personal and more real and more authentic than if I was just speaking to like maybe how I would have written content 2 years ago around like, here's your problem, here's your pain point, like, here's my tip or tool or solution for you. I think in some ways that sort of content is literally more authentic, more real, but it's doing two things, and I think this is helpful to think about. One, again, it's keeping me in my role, right, as a coach, in terms of like sharing the personal vulnerable without like asking people to caretake me, or like I'm not processing my stuff on social media, for example. But I think then when we're sharing content in that way, where we're saying I'm having a conversation with you instead of at you, and we're using ourselves and our clients and like just a little bit the frame I try to have in my mind is, if someone saw this on the Explorer feed, would they think, oh my gosh, me too? And not me too like the Me Too movement, but just like, oh my gosh, like I feel so seen, like me too. And like, and in the place of like where it feels like, oh, and because it's not calling me out, I feel like I can say me too, right? Whereas if I see something and it's like me too, but it makes me feel like I'm called out or makes me feel wrong, let's be honest, I'm not going to want to share it with anyone because it makes me look bad. I'm not going to want to leave a comment because it makes me look bad. Probably not going to want to engage with it because it makes me look bad, right? And especially for those of you who are working in the B2B space with other business owners, let's remember, people don't want to look bad, right? So I think that's also why the more we're bringing in the type of authentic content, but authentic content, again, like what we're talking about, where it's like, you can both share the wins, but where someone can say me too, or where it helps someone, if you're making people right or giving people an opportunity to look good through your content, it just makes it easier for people to engage with. And I mean, that's kind of like, that's how we build relationships, right? Like, I think that's just that's the way we can have a conversation with people as opposed to at them as well. Okay, hopefully this is making sense. Let's see. Lila says, right now a lot of my content is, this is how you can do this and get the result you want, instead of this is what you're doing wrong. Yeah, I think that's great. And what I would even play with is, let me just see what the other comment here. Lola says, do I need to have more content that's like, this is what I did wrong and how I changed it, or this is what my client was doing wrong and how we fixed it? Yeah, I think that's sort of the shift, and it doesn't even have to be like what they did wrong, but I think that is the shift a little bit in terms of, so I think there's like two pieces that are coming up here. I think one, the way in which we're consuming educational content, I think, is shifting. And I think it's not like saying, here's how to do this, or here's how to get this result is bad. I think that people still crave that kind of content. But I think in general, that is, I think we're looking for something from someone that is a little bit more personal in terms of, if we're going to share, here's the how, it's here's how I did this, here's how my client did this. If nothing, for no other reason than there is so much noise in the online space and everybody's saying the same fucking thing. And not saying you are, Lilith, but I think this is like, in terms of like the mindset behind why this shift is happening. I think also with things like ChatGPT and just how much information is available for people, I think that content is just, it's just not going to convert in the same way. Whereas when that slight shift of like, here's how I did something, here's how my clients did it, it kind of creates a more thought leadership driven post, and it becomes a little bit more unique. But again, I think what you're also doing is saying, like, there's social proof in that, but you're also including them in the conversation. And I think it just changes the type of education. If I'm just trying to think back, I did a reel, it doesn't even matter when, but it was a little bit more kind of what we're talking about. Like, here are the things that are, it was probably even like what we're talking about. Like, here are the things that are working right now. And it was just interesting to see, like, it wasn't a bad post. I think it was still good content. It still worked. But if I share instead, here's specifically the shifts I've made, like, here's more of the insight, here's like, it's almost like more the nuance. If I share that from my perspective, that content just performs so much better, because I think that's just what we are craving so much of right now. Excuse me, I have hiccups. And this might change in a year, right? This might change. I mean, who knows? But I think this is just the shift we're seeing. I said this to one of my clients, and I don't know if this will land for you, Lilith, but I think about the content I wrote kind of like my first year of business. Like, let's be honest, my first 3 months of business, I didn't know how to create content. I like used Pinterest quotes and like probably shared other people's quotes. But I share like after that, the content that was really working for me at that time, and I think what was kind of the trend there was a lot more of what we're talking about here. It was more like the insights and like the nuances and like the personal, like that's also, I didn't have 8 years of business experience. And so I almost feel like we're returning to that content a little bit more. Whereas like there was a whole swath of time in our online space where it's like, that was not the content. It was like, show people what an expert you are. So I'm saying this for everyone to say, like, if you were doing that in the past, that wasn't wrong. It's just we've seen a shift and markets and audiences shift. Let me see here. Lo says kind of like social proof for the concept in each piece of content. Yes, I'm just thinking through that. Yeah, I think exactly, like it can be the social proof. I also want to put the pressure, like don't feel like and everyone need to be like, and my client did X, Y, and Z. Let me actually pull up something, so it might just be easier for me to pull up an example of I'm just pulling something up here. So this is maybe this will be an example for you and just for everyone listening. Because yes, it can be the social proof, but I think just remembering social proof can look in different ways. So I posted a reel yesterday that people seem to like, and the hook in it says, sometimes the best solution and most healing thing to hear is, I see you. That's a lot you're dealing with. That sounds hard. Not everything is a limiting belief or a fear. Not everything needs to be fixed to feel better. And then in the caption, I go on to say, like, as a business coach, coaching high achievers, like, here are some of the challenges I see come up, and like, here's what we work through, and kind of like, here's like the truth on the other side. So to what you're saying, like, there's still social proof in that. I'm like talking about being a business coach of 8 years, or like I might share like, you know, the clients I work with, but I'm using like, this is very much making people right, as opposed to maybe a year ago, right? This could have been a sassier thing where it's, you know what I mean? Like, where I could have like called out the coaching space. I don't know. There just could have been a sassier way to probably frame, like, if this and this and this is happening, like, it's, I don't even know how I would have said it, because I'm like so in the practice of not making people wrong, but I think there just could have been a sassier way to say it. But in terms of the social proof, I think part of the social proof in this is also like, here's how I think about it, or here's how I would coach a client through it, or like, here's what me and my client worked on together. So just to give you some examples, it doesn't all have to be like, and this client got this result, or like, this client made this much money. I think that is also beneficial, but permission to bring in, like, this is authenticity as well, right? Like your struggle or your client's struggle and how you all work through it. Okay, well, it says, okay, that helps, good. Because I didn't prep what I was going to pull up, I'm sort of like, I hope this is a good example. Let me just see my notes here, though, because I feel like I had a couple. This is the piece, and well, this might help as well with just the directness piece. One of the notes I made that I wanted to share, like, 2 notes here. Just, I said this already, but I think it's subtle, right? When I look at content, there's like, if I see a reel that doesn't do well, I might repost the same exact content and just give it a different hook. It's not like the content isn't working or the message is bad. Sometimes it's just the positioning of it. And I think we're veering a little away from the original authenticity conversation, but just since we're having the content conversation here. But I would just be thinking through the lens of like, how the difference between someone feeling like, oh my gosh, me too, versus, oh my gosh, I feel so called out, right? Someone feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel so seen, heard, and understood, versus I feel so wrong and shameful, and like my face is red. You know what I mean? Like, it can be the literal same content. It's just sort of in how we frame and position it. And I think that's just kind of the difference to play with. And then to bring it back to, and to Lilith, I think just to like put a button on what we were saying, what I was saying earlier is, I just think of it through the lens too of like, how can I just be willing to fall on the sword a little bit in terms of authentically share my story, right? But just in the way we were talking about, where it's like sharing it in a way that's in service of the message and the story and the lesson. But how can I sort of be willing to be like, hey, I'm not a guru. I am human. I am imperfect. I've had challenges and struggles too, right? How can I be willing to fall on the sword as the way to like show the lesson, share kind of what's going on, or clients as well, as long as I'm not making my clients obviously feel wrong or bad. But with kind of the authenticity piece we're talking about, just being mindful of still doing that from a place of, and I'm still an expert, and I'm gonna like coming in with my authority. That's just my reminder that I've got a call coming up after this, and that I'm still coming from a place of like, yes, I'm human. I'm not a guru. Like, I don't have all the answers. I'm not perfect. Like, I've gone through this stuff as well. But also, here's what I learned from this. Here's how I grew through this. Here's what I'm doing differently. Like, kind of to what you were saying in the comments, Lilith. So it's really from the energy of like, and I got you, not I need to share this because I want you to see me and I want you to like get me, or to like make me feel seen and heard and understood, or to like give me praise, right? It's more of a like, how can I use this as a way to say like it makes me think of like the People magazine, celebrities, people, they're just like us, or whatever isn't it People magazine where they do that, right? Where it's sort of like that. But also, I have been coaching for 10 years. I have been in business for 8 years. I have built a very successful multi-six-figure practice. I have been fully booked for 5 years with 20 to 25 clients. I have helped 16, 17 clients at this point make 6 figures. Many make multi-six figures. 3 clients make $1 million. I have made 1.4 million in my business, right? Like, I have figured things out. And so how can I also make sure like that authenticity is also being shared? Because I think we want to remember, people still want to know how we can help them solve their problem. That is still our job. That's why I keep coming back to like, what's the role? What's the context for where we're sharing this content, right? When I go to my coach, right, her job is to help me with whatever I'm struggling with. When I'm sharing, if I'm sharing authentically, in air quotes, something personal to fall on the sword that maybe I struggled with in the past, I'm still showing up in my role as a coach to say, I got you. And I'm still like, my job is still to help people with their challenges. So I think we just want to remember, people still have a problem that they need help solving. So our job is, yes, to like not make someone feel wrong, and to say like, I see you, I get you, I'm human. Maybe I've been there, my clients have been there, but also to remember, we're not just saying I get this, I've been there, but also that I also know how to help you solve this problem. And I think that's the part where if we forget that second part, unintentionally our content might even perform well, but it can get us kind of like friend zoned, is what people often call it, because suddenly then it's like super inspirational, or like people are like, oh, this is so helpful. But if we're not also positioning ourselves as the expert, and I don't think, Lilith, I don't even think this is like from what you're describing anything you have to worry about, but just for everyone listening, right, that's the part that we're missing, and that we need to make sure that when we are showing up to not be fake, when we're showing up with our authenticity, we're showing up authentically in our role as a service provider. So yes, we're saying, hey, me too, I've been there, and also here's what I figured out. Here's the tool I have. Here's the methodology I have. Here's how I know for a fact, because I've been there and I'm on the other side of it, that I can help you too. Because if we're not bridging that gap, right, like then we do just get kind of in the, you're so inspiring, you're like, I want to be best friends with you, because then we can just commiserate together, right? Like, not that that's a great way to be best friends with people, but like, I think that's more when that, what that kind of content feels like, as opposed to, oh, I don't feel wrong, but also you just gave me an aha, you just gave me an insight, you just helped me see something that maybe I could do differently. You just created some awareness around like problem awareness for me. You just helped me see how you might be able to support me. And that's the piece we want to shift if we want our content to both be what people are craving right now, but also to lead to sales from the right people, without suddenly being fake. Because remember, it's fake both ways. It's fake if we're lying about shit we can't help people with, or lying about results, or being a part. No one here is that person, but the 10% of the problematic part of our industry, which I'm not going to get on a soapbox about today, right? But it's also lying if we omit, lying by default. I'm not actually calling anyone a liar, but like, it's not being fully authentic if we're omitting how we can actually serve someone, support someone, our own results, our client results, the other side. Okay, Lila says, okay, that helps. That's a great check. I'll definitely check in with that after I make something. Like, how will they feel when they read this? And Lila says, yes, I love that. Let it be seen versus trying to be seen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm glad that was helpful. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else on this that I want to leave. So Lila, if you have a quick question, just because I feel like we opened up a couple different topics here. And I want to make sure, I have a lot of notes that I did not talk about, but I feel like we had a very good conversation, and I appreciate the questions because I feel like it went exactly where I needed to go. But I'm just seeing if there's anything else. else here. This is the last note. I'll just say with the, because this came up with what Lilith was saying. I think this is with the authenticity piece, but also just sort of like with educational content. I think just remembering. Sometimes I like to think about, what's the content that attracts me? How do I learn best? Like, what kind of education am I really looking for? I don't know about you, but I'm not looking for. I don't like. I don't think you said this at all, but just with the education piece and like the how-to piece, I know I'm not looking for tips and tricks and hacks, and I'm not even like looking for step by step. And maybe that's where I'm at in business, but the way that like the kind of educational content that helps me the most is when I read something and it gives me an insight about myself, about my business, and when I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way, or like when I'm like, oh, like now that makes sense. And so I think just remember, because I think there's also noise in our online space where it's like educational content is out and it doesn't convert, and I think it's like yes, and like I think some of the old school form of content maybe doesn't convert in the same way because we all have information overload. We can download. Information is everywhere, right? We can like that's not what we are not in a time where the problem we need to solve is information, but education comes in so many different forms, right? And I think this is just asking all of us to elevate the way in which we teach. And I think what we're talking about here, when we're authentically showing up in our role and meeting people where they're at and giving them insights and nuance and helping them see something different or giving lessons in that way, that is still education, right? That is still educational content. It's just coming at it from in a different way. And I think it's in a way that most people actually learn the best, and how most of us like to consume content and actually get those ahas. So I just wanted to say that because I think almost like everything in our space just gets so kind of like black or white, all or nothing. And I don't want anyone walking away from any of these conversations thinking like, well, this is out and this is out. There's shades of gray with everything. But just to kind of see how like you can play with what we're talking about today for educational content. And then with everything, depending on when you listen to this replay, we're recording this in June of 2024. This is what's true today. This is what's true in our space today. I think sort of like the game plan through the end of the year is really thinking about how do we create content that's speaking with our audience, not at our audience. Like I would just take that away. We'll give credit to my mastermind sister for that framing. But I think that's just a helpful way to think about it. But pay attention to your business, pay attention to your audience, pay attention to your metrics. Your business will always give you the answers. This is what I'm seeing to be true for most people, but I have clients where like that isn't true because their audience responds to something different. And we might also see the industry shift, or the industry you're in might be a little different, your audience might be a little different. So with what I'm saying here for everyone, take this as a general concept, but then test this and pay attention to what's true for you with your business, with your marketing. Your business is always going to give you the right answers if you're paying attention to it. And if it's giving you the answers that say, hey, people aren't responding this in the same way, then take a look at why they might be. See if you can put your detective hat on. And what I would say for most people, it's not that the information or the context of the content is wrong or bad. It's usually more the positioning, the messaging, or kind of what we're talking about here, right? Where we're being like fake authentic because we're like not wanting people to see a certain thing or make people feel bad. Like just check in with those pieces so you can see what you might want to play with. And again, if you want support with this is exactly why I created my strategy intensive, Your Marketing Multiplied. I literally created this as I was seeing these changes in our market space. So we do have one available this month, and then I do have an ongoing 6-month spot opening up in July. I will drop a free discovery call link below if you're interested in either one of those. I would love to connect with you. I'm excellent at this. This is what I geek out on. This is what I study in my own business, my clients' businesses, and I would love to support you in getting clear on not only how to position and message yourself with what your audience is going to land with today, but how to do it in a way where you're not just growing massive numbers that are vanity numbers, but attracting the people who are right for your work, right for your offer, and who by the time they get to your sales page or on a call with you already know they want to hire you, because that's how congruent what you're speaking to is to them and their challenges and their problems and what they want. And then also mapping out, or if you already have a marketing strategy, just revamping it, updating it so that it really is with what's working in 2024 to bring in those consistent leads so you don't have things dry up in your business and to bring in those consistent sales. I'd love to support you. So I will drop links for those free calls before, and I'll be back next week with another fun topic for y'all. Thank you for being here live, and Facebook is giving me weird messages. I'm experiencing performance issues. Well, hopefully this works, because I'm seeing that message at the end. I had too many tabs open, Facebook is telling me. So hopefully this played through the whole way. But if you all have any questions on the replay as well, just always drop them below for me and I will answer them. And I'll be back next week. We'll have another conversation. Bye.